I'm Cameron. I spent years building my career and creating a life I loved. And when my Prince Charming finally showed up, he had 4 kids in tow. Fast forward through lots of mistakes made and lessons learned, step-family life was much more complicated than I realized. If you're looking for help with blended family life, you're in the right place. Welcome to the Stepmom Diaries, where we keep it real as we dish about all the things. This is your weekly dose of blended family inspiration and encouragement. You're not the wicked stepmother, so let me help you find your fairy tale ending. Come on, let's do this. Welcome. Before we get into things, I just feel like I want to take a minute because I know that some of you are like me and maybe coming off of the high of last weekend's Stepmom Summit. And others of you may just be hearing about it everywhere and wondering what it's all about. But I want to tell you, after what was an amazing 3 days, 22 hours on Zoom on camera for 3 days, I will tell you that I was exhausted afterwards, but it was like the best kind of exhausted, like the energy that you guys brought and all the attendees. I mean, it was really, really amazing. There's nothing like it. And it's the first time we've done it all live like this. And it was transformational, I think, for everybody that showed up. But after it's been over, I will tell you that I've been seeing emails and messages in my DMs, and it's the thing that happens every time there's a big step family event. And it's you spend a weekend with women who really get it. Women who, when you talk about feeling invisible at a school function or at, your stepkid's graduation, you don't have to explain yourself because they know exactly what you're talking about. They don't flinch when you're talking about like the latest thing that happened with your partner's ex. They laugh at your stories when, and it's a knowing laugh because they've been there. And for those few days, you feel normal and you feel seen. And you feel like you're not going crazy, right? You're just living in a complicated situation that most people don't understand, but you are with your people who do, right? And it is this wonderful feeling that sort of envelops you for 3 days. And then Monday hits. And you're back in your kitchen, you're making breakfast for kids who won't acknowledge you or, are mouthing off. Your partner is rushing out the door, stressed about the latest text that the ex, that came through from the ex. And all of a sudden, all of those warm feelings, all of those feelings of like, yes, I've got this, it's all gone. And you're back to wondering, are you doing everything wrong? Are you being too sensitive? Are you the problem? So I wanted to start today by just reminding you, you are not the problem. You are doing it as well as you can. You're just doing it alone. And that's what we're going to talk about today, is why stepmom life can feel so isolating, because it really can, right? I mean, the obvious truth that nobody really wants to say out loud, especially like when you're about to marry somebody with kids or you've partnered up with somebody with kids, the thing that nobody wants to say is like, being a stepmom's lonely as hell. And I don't mean lonely like I wish I had more friends. I mean lonely like I'm surrounded by the people who are supposed to be my family and love me. And, but I feel like I'm watching their lives through a door. And most of your friends and family don't get it. Not because they don't want to, but they can't. When you try to explain that it's complicated, when your stepson's baseball game conflicts with your anniversary dinner, they look at you like you're overthinking it, like just go to the game, be supportive. But it's not always that simple, right? I mean, if your partner's ex is there who's made it clear that you're not welcome, and if you hadn't already missed 3 anniversaries for various kid events that land on the same day, your friends may think you're being a little dramatic, but you're not, Your friends who don't have kids think you're dramatic. Your friends who do have kids think you should just love them like your own. Because isn't that what stepmoms are supposed to do? And your friends who are also stepmoms, if you're lucky to have any, And I know that a lot of the women I work with don't. They're probably dealing with their own chaos, and they don't necessarily have the bandwidth to deal with yours too. It's really hard, right? And what I've learned after working with so many stepmoms over the years is society has set you up to fail and then blamed you for failing. Think about it. We live in a culture that tells moms and stepmoms to love unconditionally. But for stepmoms, you're supposed to love unconditionally, but you also are questioning whether you have the right to act like a parent, to set boundaries, to even have opinions about the kids you're helping to raise. And God forbid you put a picture online, or, what are you supposed to do? I'm seeing all of these posts on Instagram about, like, I'm going to put up a picture a day because I've got a senior. Well, what are you supposed to do if you're a stepmom? You feel bad putting pictures up because you don't feel like a real mom. I don't know. It's hard. I mean, you're expected to be Mary Poppins and the fairy godmother rolled into one, but, God forbid you actually try to, like, parent the kids, or heaven forbid have, a bad day. Right. And if you're working with, if your partner's ex is actively working to reinforce the idea that you're the problem, if she's undermining decisions that you and your partner made together, if she's forgetting to include you in important information, if she's making comments about how things were better before, she's sending the message that you are an intruder in your own family. And all of that messaging, you internalize it. And you start believing that maybe you are too much. Maybe you are being unreasonable. Maybe if you just tried harder, or complained less, or loved better, maybe everyone would be happier. I don't know. That voice in your head that says maybe I'm the problem, maybe I'm just not doing enough, it's not coming out of nowhere. It is cultivated by a system that doesn't know what to do with stepmoms. So we're kind of told to just fade away and disappear. Be quiet, be small. Dr. Patricia Pappernow, who spoke at the Stepmom Summit over the weekend, she has been studying stepfamilies for decades, and she talked about how stepmoms are at a higher risk for depression, anxiety. It's this outsider syndrome, that is what she calls it, and it's insidious and it doesn't go away. We are expected to function in a role that really has no clear definition, no roadmap, and no support system. But you're not failing, and I want you to know that. You're not failing. You're being failed by the system. All of that does add up to a really hard place for stepmoms. A place that keeps telling you to try harder, alone. But this is not about you failing. It's about not always having a safe place to land. And that can be really, really hard. Everybody wants a safe place to land, right? So I'm going to talk a little bit about this myth of trying harder. I see it everywhere, right? And it goes alongside the shoulds. I should try harder. I should be more patient. I should love them more. I should complain less. Girlfriend, no. The truth that is hard to tell you, and the truth that a lot of folks won't tell you, is that perfection isn't going to fix all of this role confusion. Trying harder isn't going to make the ex respect you. Being more patient is not going to create the bond you want with your stepkids. Most of the time, trying harder just leads to resentment, burnout, fighting with your spouse about the things that used to feel somewhat manageable. So I had a client once. Let's call her Sarah. She came to me after 5 years of what she called throwing spaghetti at the wall, because she had tried everything, every parenting book, every stepfamily resource, every piece of advice from her friends who meant very well. She was making Pinterest perfect birthday parties for kids who barely thanked her. She was going into debt buying Christmas presents that, she barely got recognized for. She was waking up at, 5 or 6 a.m. to make breakfast that nobody ate, right? And you know what happened? The stepkids just kept expecting these grand gestures, but it didn't make them any closer to her. And her partner started taking it all for granted. And she was exhausted. She was resenting everyone. And she was kind of starting to hate the person she'd become. And that's what happens when we buy into this myth that trying harder is going to fix it. We lose ourselves in the process, right? Here's what changed for Sarah. And what I want you to hear today is that real change happens when you stop doing more and you start getting help, right? She did not need another strategy for connecting with her stepkids. She needed somebody to tell her that what she was feeling was okay. She needed permission to set some boundaries. And she needed to understand that the problems in her stepfamily weren't just hers to solve. And once she stopped trying to be the perfect stepmom and started focusing on just being a healthy adult in her home, everything shifted. Not overnight. This is not a fairy tale, right? We've established we're not the evil stepmother and that this is not a fairy tale. But it started shifting gradually and sustainably. It's huge. The stepkids started respecting her more, not less. Her partner started appreciating her efforts because they came from a place of choice, not desperation. And she felt like she got herself back. So here's what I want to leave you with. You don't need to try more. You need to be seen, right? Let me paint a picture that might be a little uncomfortable, a little uncomfortably familiar also. It's a Tuesday night. Your stepdaughter just had an absolute meltdown because you asked her to put her dishes in the dishwasher. Something that is literally a basic household expectation, right? But somehow you're the bad guy. Again, your partner's at work, dealing with his own stress. The bio mom is texting a passive-aggressive message about how some people just don't understand children. And you're standing in your kitchen wondering if you have just lost your mind. You're running through the conversation in your head. Did you say it wrong? Were you too harsh? Did you have done the dishes yourself? Maybe you're just being unreasonable. Maybe you're expecting too much. Maybe everyone would just be happier if you kept your mouth shut and stayed in your lane. And that, my friend, is what I call the stepmom spiral. And it is what happens when we try to navigate all this with no support. When stepmoms go it alone, they spiral. Shame, self-doubt. You start second-guessing every boundary you try to set. You begin thinking that maybe you are the issue because that is easier than facing the reality that this situation is genuinely complicated and you have not been prepared for it. I see it all the time with the women who join the Stepfamily Circle. They come in convinced they're doing things wrong. They apologize for coming into the calls feeling frustrated. They ask permission to want basic respect in their homes. And you know what I tell every single one of them? You're not crazy. You're exhausted. And feeling alone makes it worse. You are seen. You are heard. Research tells us that social isolation increases the risk of depression by 30%. But for stepmoms, it's particularly dangerous, right? Because we're dealing with role ambiguity. We're also dealing with ambiguous loss, which is grieving the family life that you thought you'd have. Without support systems, we are more likely to experience chronic stress. Your body and mind get stuck in this like fight or flight mode because you don't feel safe to just exist, right? Think about it. When was the last time you felt like you could share your real feelings about your stepfamily situation without having to manage someone else's reaction? When was the last time someone said, "That sounds really hard," instead of, "But have you tried whatever?" Without support, you start editing yourself. You stop sharing the hard parts because you're tired of being misunderstood. You stop asking for help because you've learned that other people's advice tends to just make it worse or just makes you feel worse, right? And the insidious part is that your relationships suffer, not just with your stepkids or your partner, but with yourself the most important one, right? You start believing that the problem's you, and you start thinking if you were just different, more patient, less sensitive, more maternal. Talk about the shoulds, right? I had a client tell me recently that she started avoiding her own reflection because she didn't recognize the woman looking back at her in the mirror, that she was constantly apologizing and explaining herself and justifying her existence in her own home. You start believing that you deserve to be alone. But here's the thing. You're not crazy. You're not too much. You are human. You are dealing with an insanely complicated situation without the support that you need to navigate it successfully. So I'm going to say something that might sound dramatic, but I need you to hear it, okay? For stepmoms, community is not just nice to have. It is survival, okay? It is survival. Here's what happens when stepmoms find their people. They stop apologizing for existing, and they start trusting their instincts again. They remember that they're not asking for too much when they want to feel comfortable in their own homes. I see it in the stepfamily circle all the time, and I saw it at the Stepmom Summit. Stepmoms were coming into the chat day after day saying, I got this advice yesterday, and I went home last night and I had this conversation with my partner, and it made all the difference. And it's amazing that 3 days of being with other people who understand you and talking with experts, talking with coaches can make an immediate difference in your life, right? I mean, I've had members tell me that the stepfamily circle literally keeps them sane. And I don't think they're being dramatic. I think they're being accurate because having other stepmoms makes a difference. The thing about stepfamily life is it's designed to make you feel crazy. And I don't mean like, the man upstairs like set out and designed stepfamily life to make you feel crazy. I just mean the structure, the role confusion, the loyalty binds, the expectations, all of it makes you crazy. It makes you question your reality. And when you're doing that alone, you're going to lose that battle every time. But when you're questioning your reality with 5 other women who've lived it, when you can say, is this normal? And get real answers from real people, when you can share your very worst moments and have someone respond with, girl, let me tell you about last Tuesday, that changes everything. Everything. Brene Brown talks about shame can't survive when it's spoken in an empathetic environment. And shame is what keeps a lot of us stuck. We feel ashamed that we're struggling. We feel ashamed for feeling resentful. We feel shame if we don't bond with our stepkids. We feel shame if we don't like our stepkids, right? There was a moment over the summit where one of the speakers said, how many of you have felt guilty for how you're feeling or for being frustrated? And literally the amount of yeses in the chat was insane. It's like I could hear this like collective exhale of women thinking, oh my God, it's not just me. And that is what community does. It normalizes your experience. It gives you permission to be human. It reminds you that you're not broken. You're just living in a broken system. Okay. So here's what I want you to do right now, especially if you were at the summit, because if you were at the summit, I know you were building relationships and talking to other stepmoms. I want you to reach out to, if you were at the summit, I want you to reach out to the one person that got you over the weekend. If you weren't at the summit, I want you to really think about who you might have that you can reach out to. Send that text, make that call, start simple. But I need for you to stop pretending that you can do it alone, because the truth is that you weren't meant to. Okay. So going back to the Stepmom Summit, we had women who felt like themselves again. They felt understood. They felt hopeful. And then they went back to real life, right? Partner's still stressed, kids still giving you attitude, that clarity you had, the sense of I can handle this, it fades, right? And I want you to know that that's totally normal. It's just what happens when you go from an environment of total understanding back to an environment of, reality, right? The summit is amazing, but it ends. The retreats that you can go on are transformative, but you have to come home. The workshop you tune in for gives you tools, but then you have to use them in real life with real people who weren't at that workshop, right? And that's where a lot of people get stuck. They think that a weekend of feeling good or a workshop of feeling good should fix them and sustain them. But that's not what they need. You know what they need? You know what you need is ongoing support. You need a place to go when the strategy doesn't work. You need people to talk to when you're implementing boundaries and everything feels like it's falling apart. You need someone to remind you that feeling worse before you feel better is actually a sign that things are changing, not that you're failing, right? It's why inside my Stepfamily Circle membership, I've expanded my group coaching calls. So I used to do them twice a month. Now, starting in October, we're doing them 3 times a month. Because what I hear from members, what I hear from stepmoms is that they need more than just content they can watch. They want connection and they want accountability. They want the real-time support for the moment that their stepdaughter's screaming at them about something that happened 6 months ago and they can't remember if they're supposed to disengage or set a boundary or call their partner or what. You need a place to land when you're trying to be the healthy adult in your home and everyone else is acting like you're the problem because you want basic respect. Ongoing community, right? It helps you have a roadmap for keeping hope alive when things get complicated. And you don't have to join my community. I'm just talking, I want you to be in a community. I want you to find your people. Whether that's me, whether that's one of the coaches that I've trained through the Stepfamily Coach Academy, whether that's one of the speakers at the summit, whether that's just someone else you have found. I want you to find your people. I want you to find your community. Because the truth is, you're not going to perfect your way out of stepfamily complexity. You're going to community your way out of it, right? Whatever that looks like for you, whether that is, a stepmom group at church or 5 other stepmoms that you've met, at your kids' school, whatever that looks like, you got to find your people. You got to find your people. And, it's especially important if you're thinking about becoming a stepfamily coach, which I know some of you are because I've been getting emails since the summit. This is especially important. Like you can't coach from an isolated place either. You can't give what you don't have. If you're trying to help other stepmoms while you're like white knuckling your way through your own challenges alone, you're going to burn out, right? The most effective coaches I know are the ones who have their own support systems. They have their own communities. They understand that helping others doesn't mean you stop helping yourself, right? And if you're feeling called to do that work, the first step is not getting certified with me or building a website. It's doing your own work. It's getting the support you need. So if you're sitting in the post-summit fog right now, or if you didn't go to the summit and you're just like, oh my God, I can't make this work. I can't stay consistent. I should, right? I get you. And I understand where you're coming from. I understand where you're coming from. What I love most about the community that I have is not the success stories, although those are amazing, right? It's the text I get on a random Tuesday that's like, hey, I used that script you gave me and it actually worked. It's the member who shows up to the call and says, I had the worst week, but I knew I could bring it here and talk about it. It's watching women remember who they were when they're not constantly defending their existence. And that is what I want for you, wherever you find it. It's not perfection, and it's not a fairy tale stepfamily. It's the experience of feeling like yourself again. It's being surrounded by people who think you are the right person for the job you've been given, the job of stepmom. So if this resonated with you, I hope you'll do me a favor and share it with one person that you think needs to hear it. And if you haven't left a review yet, please take 2 minutes to do that. It helps other stepmoms find us. And really, I want this for every stepmom out there. So I want you to know you've got this. You don't have to do it alone. We are here. I've got links in the show notes for the Stepfamily Circle if you're interested in finding community. I've got links for the Stepfamily Coach Academy if you're interested in training. But more than anything, I want you to know that you're not alone. And you don't have to wait until the next big stepmom event to feel seen. You don't have to white knuckle it every day. And you don't have to keep pretending that trying harder is going to fix all the stuff that's going on. You are ready and you deserve it. So I will see you next week. And until then, I hope that you will take one small step towards finding your people, whether that is finding people online, whether that's reaching out to me, whether that's reaching out to somebody else in your life. But I will look forward to seeing you next week.
That's it for this week. If you've enjoyed our chat, I hope you'll help spread the word. Share this episode with friends and head on over to wherever you listen to podcasts and leave me a review. And don't forget, for more great stepmom content, head on over to thiscustomlife.com and follow me on social media. Just search This Custom Life on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and Pinterest. Until next time, you keep being you and know that we are in this together. See you here next week.